Q&A, like ask anything. You can do. I won't necessarily answer anything, but you can ask anything if you like. Friendly parasocial stalker. Oh my god, that's such a fucking creepy name. Such a creepy question as well. It's like, if I may be so bold as to ask, how may you feel if next summer a complete stranger were to slide a letter under your door and kindly propose to you to meet them at the nearest beach? Of course, regardless of your answer, they would respect your boundaries. I'd just probably ignore it, mate. But if they pushed it any further, I'd probably knock them out. I've learned my lesson with the police. You report a stalker and they're like, well, we're not going to do anything until you're dead. So I'm just going to be like, he's not respecting your boundaries if he's tracking you down and putting a letter under your door. I know, right? Like, I kind of feel like the psychology of those types of people is that they are sea lioning to an extent. So they know that they're pushing your boundaries and they know that they're making you uncomfortable, and that is the point. But they want to disguise it as romantic interest and infatuation. So it's true they're usually attracted to you, and it's true that they are addicted to watching you, to loving you, to seeing what you're up to the point where usually parasocial people who get to that point go in cycles of getting mad at themselves for watching you, getting mad at themselves for wasting so much time obsessing over you, but they can't fucking stop. Even when it gets them in trouble with the police, even when they lose lots of money they don't want to spend, even when they lose loads of time they could be using to fix their life, they're still so addicted to the feeling of engaging with you, even if the feeling has turned sour, because it's a kind of mental health issue, and it's a delusional mental health issue. But where people often go wrong is they think that this person is just so obsessed with you and in love with you that they don't realize how uncomfortable or dangerous they're being. But more often than not, it's that they resort to making you uncomfortable because they don't know how to make you feel anything. When they make you react to them, they feel a connection. If you look at them, if you read something they wrote, if you like get angry at them or happy with them or whatever, if you just react to them in any way, they feel connected to you, more connected to you than just an outsider who doesn't get to touch your life. So when romantic advances stop working, when gifts stop working, when excuses stop working, when sitting on your doorstep and knocking all day stops working, they start becoming obsessed with getting a negative reaction because it feeds them, it feeds that addiction. They can't help it, they just need you to react to them. And when you stop reacting to the quote-unquote positive attempts, they're like, please love me, please look at me, please accept my gift, they resort to negative attempts. So they start harassing and they disguise it as, but I just love you, but I just love you, and it's all just to incite terror. That's all it is, because that terror reaction is still a reaction. You're still acknowledging me, I exist, and you know, and you've seen my letter, I know, because you're scared, right? And so the saddest thing about like delusional people like that, because the delusion comes in that anything's going to come of it, like anything other than a slow spiral towards them going to prison. No stalker has had a happy life and a happy ending from constantly escalating. So the addiction has a negative impact on their life, and more often than not, they're so delusional that they can't actually introspectively identify that it's happening to them. So even if you point out this behavior, they will never cop to it. I know this because I had a stalker once who had a whole friend group on another server, another Discord server, and it was mostly people from my Discord server, and they all completely abandoned this person because they were constantly talking about me, constantly obsessing over me, kept trying to divert the conversation back to about me whenever I'd mentioned them, what I was up to today, how I feel about them, just all of it, right? And they're like, this is really weird, and you're being really weird, and we don't want you here. And they couldn't understand what was going on. They were like, what? You're abandoning me over nothing? Over making conversation? And they're like, no, over stalking this woman. And they were like, over making conversation? I just don't get it. And like, you cannot point it out to someone who's suffering from this. You can't. It's invisible to them. You could describe it step by step, and they could be doing every single step you've just described, and they'll go, nah, that's not me. Like, there's no, they will just keep obsessing, keep watching, even if it doesn't make them happy anymore, even if they're just upsetting someone, even if it's just death threats and shit. Like, they will just keep doing it because they're so addicted, and it ruins their life. It ruins their life more than it does the victim of the stalking in most cases. Millions of people get stalked, right? But stalkers tend to be people like, there was a guy who stalked Amaranth and he sold up all of his possessions and moved to her PO box and streamed himself waiting for her to come to her PO box to get her stuff. Like, stalkers tend to go to extreme measures. They'll uphold their entire lives and go to move close to the person that they're obsessed with. They'll move their job to close to where that person is that they're obsessed with. And if they can't get a job, they'll end up homeless. But they'll still rather be homeless and sleeping on the streets near the person they're obsessed with than be miles and miles away and out of reach, working and having a working home and things like this. Like, these people destroy every drop of themselves, dedicated to just harassing a person that they become obsessed with. And it's so hard to treat because they don't identify it. So even if they went to a therapist, right, by that point of mental health issue, they usually can't afford one. But when they can afford a therapist and they go to a therapist, they're often not explaining any of this behavior. They're often never, when the therapist goes, hey, what did you do today? They're not usually going to say, well, I sat outside this girl's house for like 9 hours. And then I wrote her a love letter and she ignored it. So I bought her some roses and she ignored it. So I set fire to her best friend's house to see if she'd come out and look at the fire, and she did. And I had some chloroform ready, but I'm a bit dyslexic, and it was actually just aftershave. And so I just chased after her with a foamy rag, and then she called the police, and I spent the night in a cell. And when I got out, I immediately sat outside her house again. They never say that. What they'll say is, this and that, working, the usual. The problem with stalking is that it's incredibly common. Millions of people in the UK alone get stalked. Like, around the world, it'll be a ridiculous number, right? Because so many people fall prey to this obsessive behavior. And it is a mental health problem, and it is a delusional mental health problem. And sometimes it relates to things like schizophrenia and other really severe mental health problems. Sometimes it can be a symptom of overuse of drugs and alcoholism, symptoms of brain injury, poisoning, low neurodevelopment, delayed neurodevelopment. Like, all of these things can increase your risk factors for stalking or inappropriate behavior. Sometimes, like, a cycle will be, you get a partner, you have a normal life, and then you break up and you deal with it with alcoholism, for example, and you get really depressed and you drink, and then your brain is like less functional in multiple regions. The way it processes dopamine is completely different. Your behavior is completely different. Your ability to step out of depression becomes completely more challenging. And like, in that mentally vulnerable state, things like delusions, like, if I got back with my partner, everything would be fine. Last time I was fine, it was with my partner, not realizing that it was also when you weren't drinking yourself to death. And so they develop that thought, and then it's much, much harder to challenge it, and it's much, much harder to assess it properly, that thought, that analysis, and go, is that actually true? So in that mentally vulnerable state that, like, things like addiction can put you in, or head trauma and stuff like that, right? You can end up thinking a silly thought like, oh, when I was with my ex, I was fine. And then obsess over your ex and go, my life will always be over and terrible until I get back with this person. And so they start stalking him, or they start like following him everywhere. It starts with their socials and watching every single one of their socials. It goes to trying to catfish them and making multiple profiles and messaging them like, please answer me. I'm a total stranger, by the way. And then when that doesn't work and it's very obvious it's you, they start like turning up at your door, or sending you things, or trying to get you fired from your job, messaging your boss and being like, hey, I don't like this person, and like your boss just being like, there's some weirdo who's clearly obsessed with you. Like, there's loads of different ways that stalkers can behave, and they just get progressively more unhinged, putting trackers on your vehicle, like just loads of crazy stuff that they end up starting to do. And if the only way that they can get a connection to you is through negative behavior or through making you as miserable as them, they'll try it. Because happy people don't go around trying to make other people miserable. Like, I'm a relatively happy person. I'm enjoying my life. And I don't go around looking for other people to target, and I'm not trying to make them feel worse about themselves. Like, I don't even care about, like, people who've wronged me in the past. Like, I'm not trying to make them feel worse about themselves. I don't care how they feel. I've got my own life to live. You can't do anything to deserve this behavior. You just can't. Because it's not reasonable behavior by anyone. Like, even if someone wrongs you, like, stalking is never the answer. Like, stalking is never a reasonable reaction. Ever, ever, ever. Not every stalker is a romantic stalker. So some people stalk you because they differ from you politically, for example. Political streamers get a lot of stalking and harassment. People will do all sorts of terrible things to them just because they dehumanize them the minute they can categorize them. So, like, if you, for example, decide, oh, this person's woke. I've got a name for you. It's other. You're not a person. You're woke. You're a leftist. You're a right-wing chauvinistic prick. Like, in politics, the minute you identify a group of people that is not you, you immediately imagine that they don't have any thoughts or feelings and that they deserve every bit of punishment for being the way that they are. And so, like, that has nothing to do with delusions that a box of chocolates or whatever would win them over romantically. You know what I mean? But they'll send them to say, hey, I know where you live. Like, it's a covert threat, right? So there's romantic stalking and there is parasocial stalking where someone thinks that you're their friend and they're just delusional about it. And they're, like, constantly trying to get in contact with you because they think that you two are just destined to be best friends or destined to be lovers and that they just need to talk to you for a bit. So they'll vie for your reaction. They'll be like, come on, just talk to me. Just talk to me. If I can get you to talk to me, you'll understand. We're meant to be together. You just don't know it yet, but we are. We're soulmates, right? So the way that they'll go about that is they'll try and message you over and over and over and over and over and over. And when that doesn't work, they'll start being threatening over and over and over and over and over again. And when that doesn't work, they'll start turning up and they'll be there all the time until you call the police. And then they will dodge the police in any way they can and keep showing up. You don't understand. Forget the restraining order. Just speak to me for 5 minutes and everything will be fine. Like, so often they think that if they talk to you, you'll understand. Even if their behavior is reprehensible, even if their behavior is not forgivable, or even if it's just like you don't like this person and you'd never hang out with them, even if they hadn't done anything wrong, you just don't click. Like, and they think, no, we'd be best friends. If you just talk to me, we can just clear this up in 5 minutes. And then they'll explain. You see, when I tried to murder your child, it was because you had kids with the wrong person. You're supposed to have kids with me. Don't you see? I love you. I love you more than air. I love you more than freedom. Like, I was willing to go down for murder of a child to be with you. So you have to understand, you got with the wrong person. You weren't supposed to have kids with them. Look, I photoshopped us as a family. Look at this picture. This could be us. This is our future. And it's like, they think that that's a reasonable thing that they could just say. And in 5 minutes, you'd be like, oh, my bad. Just tip the baby in the bin out of the pram and usher them into your house and up into the bedroom. Like, they usually are delusional. They usually don't know where they're going with this. They usually don't know what outcome would make them happy. And to be honest, even if they got the outcome, they wouldn't be happy. Like, there are instances where people covertly stalk someone. So covert stalking would be you're stalking someone, but they never find out. Like, maybe you had a guy that your sister used to hang out with or brother used to hang out with, and they used to bring them to the house, and they were like 5 years older. So they go to the same school, but you never see them, but you've developed a crush on them. So you start following them home, you start watching them through the window. You've noticed that at a certain hour, they're more likely to take a shower, and you've watched them take a shower through their window many, many times. You have drawings of them, you've taken photos of them at a distance. You've photoshopped yourself into all of their Instagram photos, and you have a little folder that you just look at, and like all of this sort of stuff, and you have done for years, and you found out where they work, and you decided to start showing up at where they work, and you get a temporary position where they work just so that this person will see you around, and then you strike up conversation with them after stalking every social media for years and knowing exactly what their favorite foods are, their favorite hangouts are, and things like this, and going, oh, I know this really cool bar and I really love it there. It's my favorite place. There's an amazing drink called the Rum Blast. Yeah, the Rum Blaster. You know about the Rum Blaster? You want to go get one with me? No one here seems to be into that kind of thing, you know? And you strike up conversation and you get with them, and they had no idea that that wasn't all random. They think that they never knew you and had never seen you before, and that it was completely chance that you ended up working at the same place, and that you just ended up having the same favorite things and the same, like, everything, like so much in common. And so that's covert stalking, right? And in instances of covert stalking, that person thinks, this is the love of my life and I'm obsessed with them. And if I can get with them, I'll be happy for the rest of my life. They will just get what they want and then get obsessed with somebody else and then move on and just be like, I cannot go on with my life until I be with this person. And they'll ruin their marriage and they'll ruin everything because all of their romantic feelings are like so hyper overblown that even if they got with this person, they'd just immediately turn around and, or even if it's not immediately, it could be like 20 years later, they're suddenly sniffing another guy's pants that, you know, and like watching them from inside their bin with like little cutout holes in it and shit, you know? You're missing the point. This is really interesting. So someone's commented in who says that they're a stalker, which is really interesting. Like, I think, first of all, before I read this out, flip this, like, the fact that you are able to be open about it and talk about your experience from that side is really, really cool and really, really helpful. And I think, like, also kind of brave. But they've said, I'm not sure if you're missing a small part. Stalkers wanting to try to, again, to show that they've changed for the better and want the other to see that. They harassed because they feel like the new you hasn't been seen or given a chance. I never stalked or followed through, but I felt obsessed, and I definitely felt this urge because I felt it was the right person, wrong time at the time, but that time would be a better now. Oh, so you thought like you were so infatuated with someone and they didn't like you initially, so you changed yourself and you thought, well, you haven't met the new me, and if you met the new me, you'd love me. But that's kind of like the 5 minutes thing. I guess that's another variation of the 5 minutes thing. That's what I mean by, if I just talk to you for a bit, you'd understand that you actually like me. You'd understand that we're good. This isn't weird. This is me just showing you that you would like me. And there may be loads of different excuses that you build in your head, but that's one of them. Like the idea that, no, that was the old me, that wasn't me. I've met plenty of people who aren't in that situation and aren't struggling with stalking behaviors. It's still you just don't understand, and if we could just engage with each other, you would understand. Like, that's just a similar variation of it, but it is basically the same thing. It's I won't stop talking to you even though you've told me to stop. I won't stop obsessing over you even though you've rejected me. I don't have to respect the rejection. I just need you to understand. I can make you like me. I can make you like me. Everything is different now. I can be nicer. I can be anything you want. I'm changed. Or like, you just don't understand. It was just a misunderstanding when I set your house on fire. That no. I was trying to save you from material possessions because you just love your shoes and shit and you love them more than me. But if that was out of the way, you'd realize how much you love me. The fact that I've been stalked so much, I've never seen a stalker get better. I have only had to be like, yeah, and just like deal with the situation. And then I never make contact with them again, because the problem with stalkers is you can reignite them quite often. So like you can quite often accidentally get them stalking you and stuff again just by answering a message or just by acknowledging them or like looking at them as you pass by or whatever, because they think, oh, a connection, and they just start the behavior all over again. So there's no way to check in on them and go, hey, are you cured now? Are you feeling better, buddy? Like, are you able to have a life that doesn't revolve around just watching me? So hearing that you're better now and that you're okay is really cool, because like I guess that's a missing slice of the story I have never been able to look at, which is what happens. Is there treatment? Is there somewhere you can go? Because like I'm very familiar with delusional people not explaining their problems because they don't see that it's a problem. I think it's possible for them to get mental health treatment and things, medication, help with their traumas, stuff like that, help with addictions and other things that can feed into it and trigger it for people. But I just feel like I can identify loads of different stalkers and their behaviors and what works when dealing with it and what doesn't. But I think like the missing slice before I would like write a book or whatever is to talk to people who are ex-stalkers, talk to them about their tactics and the things that they used to do to get close to someone, the things that deterred them the most, the things that excited them the most, the things that really compounded and strengthened their behavior, and also what cured them, what made them move past it. And then also the best ways to deal with stalkers, like the things that actively deter them the most, actively trigger them to end the behavior. I kind of feel like it's not the victim's responsibility to make someone not be a psycho. So some people can waste like years and years of their life obsessing over someone who is never going to give them what they want and is never going to satisfy them in any way. And usually what happens is when people realize, the main problem with stalkers is that usually if they ever realize, if they have a moment of realization that they're never going to be with you and it's romantic stalking, it's not normal for them to give up. Usually it's more normal for them to turn it into hatred. Like, love and hate are two sides of the same coin. They're obsessive, passionate feelings towards someone. And usually if you love someone, it can very easily turn into hate. Very, very easily. So more often than not, when a stalker finally realizes they can't ever have you and you're not theirs, they will quite often try to murder you. That is often a lot of the reason why people get shot or killed by their stalkers, is because their stalker's like, well, if I can't have you, no one can, because it would be the most painful thing if I had to watch you be with somebody else. The sad thing about people who are so passionately in love with someone is they turned their love for someone into the worst attribute about themselves. They use their love as a way to abuse someone and abuse themselves, because they often could be living their life, but they're sat for days, hours, weeks, years watching this person and torturing themselves over it. Like, you can't control people. It's like herding cats. Like, you can't decide how they feel about you. You can't decide whether they're nice to you. You can't decide how they're going to interact with you. That's not your choice. It's theirs. And whether you're the best person in the world or the worst person in the world, that isn't actually a reliable predictor of how someone's going to treat you.